Bam was a warlord. He was the leader of the black space. Like, this was a huge gang in New York. Africa Bambaataa wins a writing contest for UNICEF, a UN NGO, puts out a contest and said anybody who can write about Africa can go. So gang member Africa Bambaataa won the writing contest. I'll say that again.
I think they need to hear that.
Gang member Africa Bambaataa won the citywide writing contest. Winds up going on UNICEF's dime to Africa. He meets the Zulu chief there. The Zulu chief tells him about the gangs in America, just like the tribes in Africa. We ain't getting nowhere in Africa, y'all ain't getting nowhere in America. Bam came back to the United States and told all the gangs in New York City. Imagine, one guy tells all these different gangs in New York City, let's put down these rags and these colors, and instead of fighting, let's do art. Now imagine, 1974, gang prevalent, Young Skulls, Savage Nomads, Nine Crew, Casanova Fly. All these gangs are in New York. One guy, Africa Bambaataa, comes in from enlightenment from Africa. He comes back to the United States. He tells the gangs, we're killing each other. We're not going to get anywhere. Instead of fighting each other, let's compete with art. The art was breaking, MCing, graffiti writing, DJing. Africa Bambaataa started a thing called Zulu Nation. Sister mentioned just a few minutes ago, the Atlanta chapter, Zulu Nation. Bam went all over the world starting chapters when he put out a record called Planet Rock in 1981. All over the world, the first time Germany ever saw hip-hop, Africa Bambaataa. First time France ever saw it. First time Africa ever saw it. First time the Bahamas ever saw hip-hop, ever saw it. Zulu Nation, Africa Bambaataa. And he brought them breaking, MCing, graffiti writing, and DJing as the total package for hip-hop. Now why do I mention this? Because this is where I come from. There are other starts in hip-hop, but this start is the traditional start of hip-hop. Cool DJ Herc, 1973. Africa Bambaataa, 1974. Grandmaster Flash with the invention of the crossfader on the mixer, 1976. We go into business in 1979 with the Sugar Hill Gang. We sell 2 million records, and all of a sudden rapping ain't illegal anymore. So it used to be. We couldn't even rap outside. Cop would come knock you over the head and tell you to get off the block.
We used to steal the electricity. They call it theft of services. We used to pop the light.
Just elaborate. You guys, they don't know what you're talking.
When we used to bring our equipment out into the streets and into the parks, the first thing we had to do was get electricity. So we would go to the light pole and somebody would, like, you see those James Bond movies, the red wire, the blue wire? Somebody would clip the wires, rewire it, put an electric outlet there, the light would go down low, and that's where we got our power from. So that was theft of services. That was illegal.
And you get a ticket for that, and if the person was caught, you go to jail for that. The original concept of hip-hop, the original concept of it, it always started with rebellion. It always started illegal. And the reason being is not because it wanted to be rebellious or illegal, but the society, the mainstream of the 1970s was ignoring us. We wanted to wear baggy pants. They had Jordache jeans, Sassoon jeans with other tight, real tight, Jordache.
And the leather pants.
And leather pants. But I just mentioned this to say, and we've been going over too long, but I'm just mentioning to say, we'll cut it off here. Some of the things we're mentioning here, we're speaking to a young audience as well. This is a whole different time that we are talking about in the United States, in New York City. And it's real interesting that you guys are here today to actually hear this as young people. I know there's obviously some older people that understand what we're saying here from the 80s, from the 90s, even from the 70s. But those of you that may have been born in the 80s or born in the 90s, This is a very important discussion for you because the knowledge that you're going to get from us up here is going to show you how to navigate the world you're in right now with hip hop. So that's where I'm from, KRS-ONE.
Yeah. What an introduction. Okay, I mean, we've already gotten into our conversation, but before we get started, there's one piece of housekeeping I want to take care of really quick. We have to give Dr. Edmonds a hand for everything he's been doing. Okay, we'll just jump right in. I want to begin with a rhetorical question. We'll come back to this question at the end. KRS-ONE and Mr. Chang here were interested in one really fundamental question. I want to pose this to the young people here, students. What is the function of 21st century hip-hop? Because as the elder said, hip-hop emerged as a different type of form of function was different. All right, so I want you to think about that. What is the function? What is the purpose of hip-hop to you today? All right. The first question we'll begin with, since we're on a college campus, I want to start with that question about the relevance of hip-hop and significance of hip-hop in the academy. We began that conversation in the green room, but I wanted to talk more about that. And then furthermore, how should these conversations look, if you will? I guess we could begin with Chang.
Okay. So, you know, I've been watching the growth of hip-hop studies, what they call now hip-hop studies in the universities and high schools really over the last decade. And it's really exploded, I think, just in the last 5 years. I mean, I think they did a survey in 2004, and there were like 100 courses taught in universities across the US on hip-hop. And then they did one a couple of years later, and there was 300. And if you ask now, if you did a survey now, I think you're probably in the thousands. You know, you're probably in much, much higher numbers than that. So, you know, the question isn't necessarily whether or not hip-hop should be on the campuses. It already is. And the thing about hip-hop is it's always gone where folks have not wanted it to go. It's occupied space where you weren't supposed to be occupying space. You're out there, you know, at the services in the park, right? And you're out there partying where you're not supposed to be partying. And then you're on the graffiti, you know, you're doing graffiti on the train lines. You're getting up in public space where you're not supposed to be. And so why shouldn't hip-hop, you know, make the leap now to try to be in the universities where people said it shouldn't be? As recently as when I was going to school, you know, when people were, like, they would bring KRS to speak at San Francisco State, and folks would be like, why are they bringing this guy out to speak? What does he have to say? Come to find out, KRS has got like 2,000 people in the room ready to listen to what he's got to say. And so we're at that point now where we have to really take this question that the professor is posing, what is hip-hop for at this particular point, and say, you know, in the universities, the role is to advance the knowledge, to build the knowledge, to pass on the knowledge that all of these folks have been able to create. And beyond that, it's to continue the ability of hip-hop to carve out a future that's better for all of us. Hip-hop began as a rebellion against the status quo. And so hip-hop in the university needs to continue to battle against the status quo. And I think that that's basically where we're at this particular point. We just have another place and a platform to be able to fight from.
Well,
I have a passion for history and like the study of history. And so I think that hip hop as a popular culture and the current one should be studied and analyzed only, you know, in its place as sort of like a continuum of American culture. And I mean, often I think we say it's a continuum of African culture or Black culture, but it's really a continuum of this culture of this, what we call, you know, American culture. Because it's sort of, it's not the end of it, but it really pulls on every single one of these. I mean, there's always those debates about who was rapping first, and you can hear people in the bebop era, and, you know, all the way to like Parliament Funkadelic, this sort of rapping type of thing. And a lot of students would never listen to that if they weren't already into hip hop or you brought it to them in that way. I taught a class at Temple that was called The Fifth Element, and it was about how hip hop as a genre of music was kind of, at least my argument was that it was the first form to really incorporate the mass media into its, like it was very aware of it, unlike I think other musical forms. And I found that my students, and I'm only 32, born in 1978, but my students who were like your age or, you know, even in their 20s had no idea. Like I asked them who their favorite old school artist was and they said Wu-Tang. And I was just sort of like, is that what your hip hop history is? And it really does for a lot of people. So I think it's really important to all the stuff that KRS was saying, like to really take it back to 73 and also to link that to the other movements before that. So I think it's really, really important.
I don't know. It's kind of strange for me, you know, we're talking about, you know, hip hop in a, you know, a college setting. I'm really proud, like lately, a lot of times they're bringing out KRS-ONE and Jeff and stuff, but mostly I really be kind of angry because, you know, I'm like, Kool Herc is still alive, and Africa Bambaataa is still alive. This stage is big enough for their butts too. You know what I'm saying? Theodore is still alive. Love Bug Starsky, Busy Bee. I mean, there's so many of these wonderful brothers, Curtis Blow, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. They're all still here. The Chicago Gang are still here. You can ask Big Bang Hank why he bit rhymes like yourself. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Grandmaster Cass is still here. You know what I'm saying? The Cold Crush. You could look up the Cold Crush. You could go to New York and catch jams in the park right now, all summer. Homegirl Christy Pabone and her husband, they're doing jams in the park still to this day. So I like that, you know, a lot of people are studying it and a lot of people are pontificating, and I think that we need to invest in the actual people themselves rather than us just tell you about Bambaataa. Why don't y'all lobby the colleges to let them show you Africa Bambaataa? Because he can speak about himself, Kool Herc can speak about himself much better than me or KRS-ONE, as gifted lyrically as we are, much better than us.
No doubt.